So, like I said, I'm Estelle, and I will be sharing with you a little bit of insight and perspectives on investment and savings this afternoon. So, the first point that I want to make and the thing that I want to talk about is the difference between saving and investing. And this is something that many people don't realize, that saving and investing is not the same thing. There is a difference, and it's important to understand that there is a difference, and also what the difference is, and when will you be saving and when will you be investing. So let's take a look. When you are saving money, there's always an inflow and an outflow. So you can think of this as as water running from a tap. The water is coming from somewhere, so there is an inflow, and there's also obviously an outflow. And what you would then do is collect some of that water. So you would either put it into a bucket or put it in harvest rainwater, or save it in a dam, or whatever the case may be. So you are collecting something that is flowing in and flowing out, and you are doing that for future use. Investing is a little bit different in the sense that, well, first of all, you also put away something that is valuable, which there it's the same as saving, but the difference is when you invest, your investment must be nurtured and it must grow, because that's the purpose of investing, is for an investment to grow. And then it is an ongoing process. It's not something that you do and you're done with it. It's an ongoing process, and very importantly, it has a long time horizon. So investing is something usually for 5 years or longer, and saving can be for a much shorter period of time. Warren Buffett said, "Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." So in the previous picture, you saw that this small seedling that the man was holding in his hand, and that seedling will potentially someday become a tree as big as this one. And that is really what you are doing when you are investing, or at least that's the aim of investing. So now let's come to the question, why does this matter? Why does it matter what the difference is between savings and investing? So you can see saving, I'm sorry, I'm just admitting people who are still coming in. Saving and investing both can be seen as tools in your toolbox. In your financial toolbox, you have different tools. And when I have a piece of wood and I want to make it shorter, I wouldn't use a hammer for that. A hammer wouldn't help me at all. I would need a saw for that. And that is why it's important to understand the difference between savings and investing, because you want to use the right tool for the right purpose. So when you talk about savings, that would typically be for something like an emergency, a home deposit. If you know that you want to buy a home in the next few years or at some point in the future, then you can start saving and putting some money away so that you have a deposit to pay on the bond. If you want to buy a car, either cash, or if you want a deposit for buying a car on credit. If you want to go on vacation, or any other big expense that you know that you will have in future. When we invest, the most common goals are for tertiary education. So you want to provide for your kids to go to university one day. You want to provide for your own retirement, and you want to invest money so that you can leave a legacy, leave an inheritance to your children. Those are the most common reasons why we invest. So now, why does all of this matter? Think of this as your financial goals are like a destination that you want to reach. And when you are going somewhere, you need to know where you are going and how you will get there. And in planning your route to get to your destination, you need a little bit of information on the area. How does it look? What will be possible and what won't be possible? So if, for example, in the picture on the left-hand side, if you are going to travel through a city that looks like that, then traveling by car may not be the best solution. Traveling by foot may very well be much quicker. And also, if it is a short distance that you are going to be traveling. On the other hand, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, if that is what the area would look like, then traveling by car would be much easier and faster than traveling by foot. So the reason why this matters is so that you can plan well. And the better you plan, the more easy it is to stick to your plan. So now some strategies for saving. The first one is, it may sound really simplistic to say this, and it may even seem like it's not necessary to say it, and still very often people don't apply this principle. You need to spend less than you earn. And that leads to the following point, which is you have to record your expenses. You have to write down all your expenses and take a look at it every month, at the end of the month and at the end of the year, so that you can use that information to plan for the next month or the next year. And then you need to know your metrics. So what I mean by that is, it's important that you know what percentage of your income are you spending on rent or your property and other living costs. And I will say a little bit more about that in the next slide. So you need to at least have an idea of what percentage am I spending on the big expenses, such as housing, medical expenses, and then also savings. Then you have to have specific savings goals. We often get clients who say, I want a savings plan, or I need to start investing or saving money. And then my first question is always, what are you saving for? And very often they say, well, I don't really know. I just know that I need to save. So saving is obviously better than not saving, but saving towards a specific goal and knowing what your goal is the best situation to be in. Because again, if you know exactly where you are going, then you can plan better and plan in more detail so that you make sure that you get there. And also, if you don't know what you are saving for, like I said before, if you are saving to buy a new dishwasher, then our recommendation for what product you should use or how you should save that money would be completely different from when you say, I need to save for retirement, because it's a much longer period, especially for a young person, of course. If you're saving for retirement, that's completely different if you have a 20-year time horizon than what it is to buy a dishwasher, which you maybe will need in a year or two from now. And then once you have this specific savings goal, you need to use that information to reverse engineer it, and so that you can plan for reaching your savings goals. And I will show you an example a bit later. And then, very important, the first step, very simply, is to have a plan. And just as important as that is to stick to the plan. It doesn't help. You can have the most sophisticated financial plan. If you don't follow the plan, if you don't stick to the plan, then it's also not going to help. So this is just a quick overview of what typical spending habits look like. So for lower income brackets in the first column and for higher income brackets in the second column, there is quite a difference. So housing typically, in lower income brackets, people spend around 30% on housing. And also interesting there is for savings, in lower income brackets, it's typically around 4%, and in higher income brackets, it's typically around 14%. So if you have a budget and if you record your expenses, then you can get this information for yourself. And then you can look at what percentage you are spending on different expenses. And then you should ask yourself, do I really want to be spending 50% of my income? Can I afford to spend 50% of my income on rent or housing? Or do I really need to decrease that percentage? Okay, so here's the example. I may possibly need to go for a medical procedure in about 5 years from now. So what I did is I called my doctor's office and I asked them what the procedure would cost today. And then I took that value, which is 5,800 Rand, which is an exact value because that's exactly what it would cost today. And I calculated what that would be in 5 years from now. So with medical inflation typically being between 6 and 11%, I worked on 10% because I think for this specific procedure, it would be around 10 or 11%. So the cost in 5 years from now would be 9,773 Rand, which is also assuming that the money that I save, I won't really be earning interest on it. I'm not going to put it in a high interest bearing account because it's for a short period of time and it's not a big amount. And then I simply took the 9,700 and divided it by 60 because there's 60 months in 5 years. And that means that if I start saving today, I have to save only 163 Rand per month. And then I will have enough money for this procedure. This is, by the way, something that my medical aid won't cover. So this also brings me to another point. Some things you can really plan well for. Medical procedures such as this that you know that you will have or likely need. And then something like your dishwasher, the example that I used earlier, you know that your dishwasher isn't going to last forever. At some point, you will need to replace it. Your laptop fix, for example, that's also something that you can do a very easy calculation to see how much should I be saving to replace my laptop, because I don't want to buy it on credit. I don't want to pay interest on that. I know what it will cost today. I know what inflation is, and I know that you generally use a laptop between 5 and 7 years. So you can use that information to calculate how much you should be saving for this specific goal. And that's what savings is. So this is your savings plan. Now, an interesting question. Do you think a janitor can become a millionaire? And the answer is yes, it is possible. And the way we know that is because there was a man who did it. Ronald Reed was an American. He worked as a janitor and as a gas station attendant. And when he died in 2014, he left an estate of almost 8 million US dollars. And people were very surprised. Nobody ever knew that he had any money. And we're going to take a look at a few principles, simple principles that he applied, which made it possible for him to amass this amount of money. So the 8 million that he left behind, if you take into account inflation and also then converting it to our currency, in today's money, that's around 194 million Rand that he left behind when he passed away. So this is his Wikipedia entry. He was an American philanthropist, investor, janitor, and gas station attendant. He grew up in Dummerston, Vermont, in an impoverished farming household. He walked or hitchhiked 6.4 kilometers daily to his high school, and he was the first high school graduate in his family. His estate was nearly $8 million, much of which was in shares of stock. He bequeathed $2 million to his stepchildren, caregivers, and friends, and the rest he donated to institutions, a hospital and a library. So let's take a look at the principles that he applied to reach this amount in save or in investments. So the first thing he did is he invested in equities. What that means is investing in equities means you buy shares in listed companies. And just to put that into perspective for you, the main asset classes are cash, bonds, property, and equities. So cash means you have cash in the bank, in a savings account, or in a fixed deposit. Bonds is almost like cash, but bonds will be basically loaning money to either the government, if it's government bonds, or to companies at a premium. So you receive interest on the money that you loan them. Property can mean you buy a property that you rent out, or it can mean that you buy shares in companies that buy properties or invest in property. And then equities, which is, like I said, buying shares in listed companies on the stock market. So to understand why this is important, why it is important to invest in equities is you can, if you look at this graph, so the blue line, the top one, that is what equities would look like over a period of maybe 10 years. So if you look at the bottom line, the green one, that's an idea of what cash would look like. So your cash would, as you earn interest on it, the value would increase a little bit. It would probably never decrease unless you draw the interest. If you reinvest the interest, it would increase. But that would happen gradually, and you wouldn't suffer any big losses. But at the end, you will not have a lot of growth. If you look at bonds, for example, which is the middle line, it would be similar to cash. It may go up and down a little bit more, but again, you won't have such a big return when investing in bonds. But it is safer because you won't have the chance of losing a lot suddenly. If you look at equity, which is the top line, you will sometimes make very good profits, but you can also lose money. And you will see that equities in this graph, the line goes below the line of bonds at some point, but then it goes up again. And in the end, finally, after many years, you will have much more than when you invested in equities. So that's the risk and return relationship. When you invest in equities, there's higher risk, but the possibility for higher returns is always also there. So remember, it's not a higher risk and higher return. It's higher risk and the possibility of higher return, because we never know. There's nothing is guaranteed. But this explains why, if you are saving for a new dishwasher, put the money in a savings account, because the money won't suddenly disappear overnight. If you are saving for retirement, which will maybe be 20 years from now, then you need to invest in equities. Because otherwise, if you put it in the same savings account as your dishwasher money, it won't grow enough. You will have to take on the risk that you may lose money overnight, and this is where planning comes in, If you know it's going to be 20 years from now, then it's okay to take that risk because you know it's going to increase again if you suffer a loss. And as you get closer to retirement, when you are 5 years from retirement, then we will advise to, and this is not financial advice, you need to speak to a financial advisor for your own personalized financial advice. But generally, we do then advise people to invest a little bit more safely as they get closer to retirement so that they don't lose half of their retirement savings overnight if the market crashes. Okay, so that was principle number one, invested in equities. Principle number two, understand your investments. Ronald Reed said, I don't invest in companies that I don't understand. For example, technology companies. That was something that he felt he didn't know enough about, so he avoided them. And this same principle is something that Warren Buffett also says. He says risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. So when you know what you're doing, and maybe you don't know yourself, but you can also get advice from somebody who does know, then yes, there is some risk, but you know what the risks are. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't understand how something works, then there's a lot of risk. And to me, that's close to gambling. I was very young when my father said to me, when you buy and sell stocks in shares, or shares and stocks, then that really is the same as speculation. And I think that's the same as gambling. You often hear, especially in the recent years, we've heard about and read about people who invest in Bitcoin and became millionaires overnight because of the big returns that they got from investing in Bitcoin. I've always felt that I don't understand how Bitcoin works. I don't know enough about it. And that makes the risk too big. And the problem with that is you see somebody who invested a few $1,000 and then he made R1 million overnight, and you think, wow, that's wonderful. But it's important to understand that that's not the average. And most of us will have the average experience of something. The chances of one of us investing in something like Bitcoin and overnight becoming a millionaire are really very small if you look at it statistically. And that is why the best thing is to make an informed decision. And then principle number three, something that Ronald Reed did, is he lived frugally. His accountant said that when he came to visit him, there's street parking in front of his office, but it's paid parking. And farther down the road, there's other parking spaces, which is free, where you don't have to pay for parking. And Reed's accountant said that when he came to see him, he always parked farther down the street where there's free parking. So even something as small as paying for parking, that's something that he decided, I would rather go without that to save the money. And this is something that I really see in my clients. Something that I would say the biggest mistake that people make in savings and investing is underestimating the effect of those small amounts of money that you either spend or invest. If you spend it, it's of course to your detriment. If you invest it, it's to your benefit. Warren Buffett said, do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And it really comes down to what are your priorities. And also to illustrate this point further, the picture that you see there on the left is Warren Buffett's house. So Warren Buffett bought that house, if I remember correctly, in 1952, and he has been living there ever since. And it looks like a nice house, but it's really very modest if you consider that his net worth is $124 billion. So for somebody who has that amount of money, He really does live frugally if you look at the house that he lives in. And then number 4, buy and hold. So, like I said before, speculation that's people who want to ride the wave, as they call it. You buy a share when it's low and you sell it when it's high. And some people make a lot of money like that, but you could just as easily lose a lot of money like that, because you really never can predict what is going to happen and what the markets are going to do. So the principle that Ronald Reed followed and that Warren Buffett also promotes or recommends is to buy and hold, not to buy and sell and buy and sell, buy and sell. So you can, or before I say that, let me first say this. In the trade, we always say timing the market versus time in the market. Some people want to time the market. They want to buy low and sell high. But like I said, there's no way of really predicting what's going to happen. What's important is spending time in the market, meaning you buy and you hold for a long time and you wait. And just to illustrate the power of the time value of money. So we have 3 scenarios here. The first person invests 1,000 Rand per year at a return of 10%. He does that for only 10 years, but he starts when he's 20 years old. The second person starts when he's 30 years old, so he delays starting to save with 10 years. But he continues until he's 65. And first, we're only going to look at the first 2 scenarios. And in the second scenario, the person is also saving 1,000 Rand per year and at 10% return. So the first person put in 10,000. The second person put in 35,000. And by the end, when they are 65, the first person would have 447,869 Rand, and the second person would only have 271,024. So the second person has almost, well, not quite half, but much less than the first person, but he invested much more. And the reason is because, sorry, I want to go back, because the first person started earlier. He invested this money and then he left it there for a long period, for 35 years. Whereas this person started later, but he invested much more. And in the end, he had much more, much less. And then, of course, the person who would have the most is the one who started at 20 and kept on investing until 65. He would have 718,905. So this is to illustrate the time value of money, and that is why we say it's not about timing the market, but it's about spending time in the market. Warren Buffett says our favorite holding period is forever. And actually, if you look at the picture there of the seedlings, buying and selling and buying and selling is similar to taking that little seedling, planting it, and 2 days later taking it out again and planting it somewhere else, and 3 days later taking it out again and moving it again. Whereas what we really need to do is invest and leave it so that it can grow. Warren Buffett also says, if you aren't willing to own a stock for 10 years, don't even think about owning it for 10 minutes. Okay, so those are the 4 principles that Ronald Reed practiced. And now I want to share with you some limiting beliefs regarding saving and investing that many people have, and that I think, looking at a person like Ronald Reed, we can see that these beliefs are, it really is not true. So the first one is you need to have a lot of money to start investing. Ronald Reed worked as a janitor and as a gas station attendant. I'm sure that he didn't have money. He didn't inherit money. He came from very humble beginnings, and still he made, and he lived frugally enough so that he had money to invest. Only the rich can afford to invest. Many people believe that, and clearly it is not true. You have to be smart and know a lot about investing. So here I can say a few things. You don't have to know everything. Like Ronald Reed, he said, I don't invest in technology companies because I don't understand how it works, and I don't know enough about it. So you stick to something that you know. And then also, you can also, of course, get advice on your investments. You don't have to know everything on your own. There are people who can help you with that. People who invest are born into privilege. So like I said, Ronald Reed didn't inherit any money. And many people think that if you weren't born into privilege, then you can't do it. That's not true. So I read a lot about the topic. And if I look at people who are financially successful, I've picked up some patterns that you often really, I almost want to say always see. And I've made a list, and I can imagine that Ronald Reed would have that this would be applicable to him. People who are financially successful don't complain. They make the best of a bad situation. They believe that things will work out, but I want to add, they don't just believe that things will work out. They also take responsibility for their own results. They have realistic goals. They do their best. They are disciplined in saving money, disciplined in investing money, disciplined in living frugally. They work hard. And again, working hard, that's something that working hard on its own isn't going to make you a rich man. Many people work really hard and they have nothing to show for it. So that alone doesn't get you there. But people who are financially successful generally work hard. And like I said, they take responsibility. So they don't blame the situation on the government or inflation or the weather or whatever the case may be. They accept their circumstances as it is, and they take responsibility and they make the best of the situation. They are persistent, and that is persistent and consistent. So consistently investing and doing that little bit every day. I think, again, that's what people most underestimate. That's the mistake that people make, is they underestimate the value of just doing a little bit every day, saving a little bit every month. And then they practice gratitude. So, any questions or remarks from the audience? Anything that you would like to ask or add? I will hang out for a few minutes here, and then you are welcome to ask or to chat with me.
Hi, Estelle, if I may.
Hi, yes.
I just wanted to check in terms of getting into investments, specifically equities. Would you, for example, say it's best to rather first speak to a financial advisor in terms of, because my first question would be, how do I even know, where do I even start, like which companies, where do I find them? So what would be your advice in terms of that?
Okay, so in that case, yes, I would definitely advise you to speak with a financial advisor. You do pay a fee in the end for that, but it will be worth it, because investing in equities is not the simplest thing in the world. And you also need to have quite a bit of money. You can't really start with under 100,000, or maybe at the smallest 50,000. And there are also costs involved. You need to have a broker account. So it can be complicated if you don't know how to do all those things, and a financial advisor would be able to assist you with that. And there are other unit trusts. Unit trusts is something that was created to make it possible for people to start investing in equities for smaller amounts. So you can start from 300 or 500 Rand per month and invest in equities without going into the costs yourself and into the technicalities of getting a broker account, etc., etc. So definitely speak to a financial advisor. You are very welcome to make an appointment with me if you want to. Then we can have a chat, and the appointment won't cost you anything. Okay, somebody else is asking. Okay, how can we help somebody who doesn't have the knowledge and who wants to save? So I think that's basically the same question that you also had. Come and talk to us. We don't charge a fee for an appointment, and we can really quickly put you in the right direction when we know what you're saving for, why you're saving, and how much you're saving and for how long, etc. Then we can tell you, we can advise you on what would be the best course of action. Any other questions? Oh, I missed this one. Sorry. Okay, I'll put my email in the chat box. Somebody else said, where does one start investing in compound interest? Okay, so compound interest simply means you reinvest the interest that you earn. So the simplest way of doing that is in a bank account. If you have a few thousand Rand in a savings account, they will pay interest into your account every month on the amount that you have, and you simply leave it there, and then you earn compound interest. But again, if you have any specific goal that you are saving towards, then you are very welcome to come and speak with me, and I will advise you on what would be the best course of action, and also explain how it works. I can explain a lot here, but it will depend on what your needs are. So send me an email. You're very welcome. My email address is in the chat box, and then I can help you to get started. And again, if you make an appointment with me, it's not going to cost you anything. Any other questions or any questions that I've missed? It looks like I've answered all the questions that were in the chat box. So thank you for listening. I'll be hanging out here a few more minutes if anybody else has any other questions, and I'll also stay on just so that you can make sure that you get my email address from the chat box. Have a lovely afternoon, everybody.